and welcome to Stork'd, the podcast, in which we explore the many ways to build and define family. This is your host, Julia, and I am so excited to introduce you to Michelle Armas. Michelle Armas is an artist, a painter. I have been a huge fan of Michelle's for years. I mean, we're talking like my first career right out of school. And I think she was just on the scene as a new painter, and a bunch of blogs were highlighting how amazing she was. And I just fell in love with her work. And I always thought maybe one day I'll get to own one of her pieces. And I've been following her work for years now. And one day I noticed that she had totally switched directions in the types of painting that she was offering. And I sort of filed that away in the back of my brain as that's really interesting. And I loved it. I love her new stuff. She calls them totems. And I've since come to learn through this podcast episode what's behind the totems. And if she's painting family, she's painting love, she's painting the world and the energetic expression of the world around her. But later, just a couple months ago, she posted something on her Instagram about her battle with infertility and ultimately her adopting a daughter. And I thought, ooh, I wonder if that's what's changed her art. And I reached out to Michelle, and now we have this incredible episode about adoption and about art and about how Michelle's perception of love and family and energy informs her art. And it is really special. If you like this episode as much as I do, as much as I know you will, please do several things. First, please share it with a friend who might enjoy it as well. Second, please subscribe to our newsletter so you can get great content on all things related to family building and family lives. And finally, go ahead and give us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I know you're going to love Michelle as much as I do. Here she is. Welcome to Stork'd, the podcast, where we explore all the many ways to build and define family. Hi, I am so excited. I was just fangirling over your art, which I have been following for some time now, but now we get to talk about your art and your family life. Can you start by introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm Michelle Armas. I'm a painter living in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm an adoptive mama, and my daughter's 8, and I'm a goofball and nerd.
That's a great introduction, goofball and nerd. And I think that's true for so many of us. In fact, I want to say for all of us that we're like inner goofballs and nerds, and it makes life really fun. Does your being a goofball and a nerd inform your art? Like, do you think you can be more creative?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do not care about looking stupid. Just don't care if I look stupid. It's just like, I'm loose. I'm kind of more loose, I guess, because of that.
Awesome. Well, it's that sort of open and honest communication about who you are and where you are in life that brought me to this conversation. I have been following your art for some period of time and mostly just looking at this gorgeous stuff that you produce, which has evolved since I've been watching you. And then one day you posted on Instagram about your fertility journey and about being an adoptive mama. And I said, oh my God, this maybe puts her art in a new perspective. It shines new light on it. So I want to talk about all those things. I want to talk about your experience with fertility. I want to talk about your adoption experience and raising your daughter and your art and all that stuff. So let's kick it off from the beginning. When you think about your family life, who is in that family circle right now?
Oh man, I'm so fortunate. I have great parents. I have an amazing husband. Of course, my darling daughter. I have siblings, aunts. I mean, I'm just really fortunate. And then also I will say that I consider many of my friends to be family as well. So I have a nice big tribe.
I love having a nice big tribe. It's such a gift. And how did that tribe come together as you were going through your fertility experience? Or do you want to tell us a little bit about your fertility experience?
My fertility experience. I was diagnosed with endometriosis in 2008, but this was after many, many years. Anyone with endometriosis will tell you this was after many years of being like, really, something's wrong, majorly wrong. And I was told after the surgery I had a tumor the size of a grapefruit obstructing my intestines 99%. And I still had doctors telling me that gastrointestinal pain during your period was normal. And so it was.
That's amazing. I just love the medical community sometimes does not understand women's bodies.
Just are the worst. I have long-term medical trauma that I've had to seek intensive therapy for. But anyway, it was very much more nuanced than I'm, getting into because it's a lot. And it could be, I feel like it's triggering and traumatizing for other people who have gone through it.
Mhm.
So it's, it's not something you just talk about. But anyway, I went through that and they told me after the surgery, look, your odds of conceiving are very low. So my husband and I started trying to conceive, and we did some fertility treatments. I knew I didn't want to do IVF, and I was miserable. The fertility treatments were god awful. It took me a year to recover from the drugs that they gave me, literally a year.
Oh my gosh.
It was awful. And so I was really fortunate that I always knew I wanted to adopt ever since I was a little kid. And so did my husband. So I was not too, I mean, like I was upset. Anybody whose body is like, not working the way it should gets upset. But I wasn't like devastated. Like every doctor's office has these like crying rooms and, support groups, and they speak to you in like these hushed tones. And it's like, that's what fertility places are like. And I was told repeatedly, like, you're just the chillest fertility, patient we have. And I was just like, my perspective always has been, I'm going to be a mom. However I get there is however I get there. I'm going to be, I like literally, if I couldn't have adopted, if I lived in like the 1800s and it was like not a thing, I couldn't adopt, I would just have kids, a lot of kids around me somehow, like I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to love a child, and it's going to happen for me however it happens. I've just always felt like that.
I like that mindset that just sort of carried you through everything, this like certainty
Mhm.
about what the future might hold. And in fact, every time I have self doubts, one of my friends always corrects my language and says, it has to be the way you think about your life experience and the way that you're imagining your future has to hold on to this thread of hope.
Yeah.
But that can be really hard, especially when you're going through all the medical ups and
Mm.
downs. Was there a tool that you used to keep you positive or keep you focused on the end knowing of I'm going to be a mama?
I could see it. I have these like visions. I don't know. They're not prophetic or anything. It's just that when I want something or when I'm sure of an outcome, I can see it. It's visualized in my mind. And I, ever since I was like 20, had this vision of myself. I could always see it from behind. It was me and a little girl with dark hair. And it was just like a camera angle from behind us. And I was always with her. And I just knew she was going to come to me. I just didn't know how or when.
Hmm, I love that. I can almost see it like painted in my mind's eye the way that you just described it.
I just knew.
It takes an artist to say in one or two sentences something that you can then immediately visualize.
I think in pictures. So there it is.
Yeah, yeah, and you describe very beautifully. What's interesting though is sometimes we can hold a vision, whether it's in pictures or in concepts, and it's not necessarily shared by our partner. In this case, you said your
Mm.
partner had always had a similar vision. What was that like?
It was wonderful. As you know, I'm a kind of person who just has to be myself. And I just have to be like, this is who I am. This is what I want. I'm a very forceful person. I'm like, I'm going to have this because this is what I want. And you can come along or get out of my way. That's kind of how I am. And my husband is very much like, that's really cool. I'm going to definitely hop on and let's go do this together. He grew up in Dubai. He's not adopted, but he grew up in Dubai in a very multicultural environment. And he knew a lot of people who were adopted. He's from a multicultural family. His father is Syrian and his mother's American. And I think he just was used to that kind of just like the idea of the word family being broad and opening, encompassing many different kinds of relationships. He's a loving, gentle, wonderful man. In fact, when one of our friends was like, said to him, gosh, how great that you were open for adoption. And he was like, we need to be open for adoption as a human species. He was like, all humans need to be open to adoption. Like, this is just what we need to survive. That's how he sees it. And he's a wonderful dad. I'm really lucky.
That's a really interesting. I haven't heard that concept before. Can you expand on it a little bit? Like, what does it mean to have a human species that's open to adoption?
I think what he was trying to express was that love is life. Life is love. And if there's a child who needs a home and you have a home to offer and you have love in your heart to give a child, then that's, a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
And we both really believe that. We only have one kid. We're not the kind of people who are like, hey, let's have a whole compound, because we're not those kind of people. I don't have that kind of a robustness of me. I can do one kid. I can do one kid. But generally, yeah, that's what he meant, is that, we need to be helping each other as people. Like that's just how you show up as a human, is to love each other.
I like that this vision of your family is both visual and also rooted in like a very expansive definition of love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was the adoption experience like? Did it come together easily? Was it a long journey?
It was. Every time I tell the story, people are just like, what? So we decided to choose this agency. I can't even remember what it's called. It's not really an agency. It's like an intermediary between agencies. You tell them what you're looking for, and then they help you find an agency that has that kind of placement. Majority of people who are adopting are white. Majority of the kids they want are white, but the majority of kids, especially in the South, are not white. You start learning about all this stuff really fast, and it's just like, oh God, this is much more complicated, and there's ickiness to it that I didn't think of. It's very expensive. So we're learning all this, and we haven't done anything. We have no book, because you have to make a whole book, everything. And we've had like 1 or 2 meetings. And because I wanted to adopt for so long, that actually when I was 20 and I was at work one day, I decided to just do a little research, because I'm a planner. And I found Atlanta's preeminent adoption attorney, Ronnie Fishbein. And I never forgot her name. And so when we decided we were going to adopt, the first thing I did was Google Ronnie Fishbein and have a chat with her. And she told me to go to this place. She said, I work with this agency. You should go there. But let me go ahead and add your email. And I was like, all right. This was like 15 years after I had Googled her. So, but her name is just like memorable. So she put me on the email list. And about a couple of weeks later, I get this email from the agency saying, there's a mom. She's indeterminately amount of time pregnant. We believe 7 months, but sometimes it's really hard to tell. She was one of those women who didn't know she was pregnant.
Okay.
She is open to putting her child up for adoption, but one of the parents in the household must speak fluent Spanish, which I do. So I was like, okay. And so I got this email on August 14th. It was a Friday night. I was supposed to watch Outlander with my girlfriend. And I got this email, and I immediately called the office, and I was like, hey, am I allowed to apply for this? Because I had done almost nothing. And they said, well, technically, yes, but you haven't shown that you are up on your paperwork, and like applying for this opportunity would basically be like nearly impossible. And of course I was like, just watch me.
Challenge accepted. Yeah.
I got this. I also have a master's degree in graphic design. So I was like, book done. And I wrote the book in Spanish. I did it all in one weekend. I canceled with my friend, worked all night Friday, all day Saturday, had it printed on Sunday, had it delivered to the lawyer's office on Monday. And Monday evening, we found out she chose us.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What a turnaround. Oh my goodness.
Right? Literally, we were just like, so literally in 4 days, we went from, hey, we're going to work with this adoption agency and this year, maybe adopt this year or next year, to, oh, we've been chosen by a birth mother. Crap. So the next steps were meeting her. That was very emotional. It was really difficult to meet her.
Tell us a little bit about that, as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. I mean, it was just emotional because this poor woman her life has been so difficult and traumatic. And, when she found out she was pregnant, she had a son with her in the US, and she had to send her son back to Guatemala because she literally couldn't afford any food. And I just felt like my first instinct was, let me just help her so she can keep her child.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, this is such a devastating situation. But it was very complicated for her. She really couldn't keep her daughter. So I cried. I cried so much at the meeting that the lawyer had to be like, all right, Michelle, you need to pull it together. Yeah. It's just like, this is the difficult. And she told me, her birth mother, Alba, told me in the meeting, she looked at me in the eyes and said, I'm not changing my mind. You are going to be her mom. This is going to be okay. Because, in Georgia, there's 10 days for the mom to change her mind. So as an adoptive parent, you try to keep a little distance. Mm-hmm. Like, I never visualized myself with a baby. I did not ever once visualize myself with a baby because I didn't want to be crushed.
Yeah.
So, I'm just was really compartmentalizing and, trying to anticipate what her needs were. Like there's all kinds of laws, like you can only pay her so much to the birth mom, depending on how far along she is in her pregnancy.
What?
Yeah. Like you can't, in other words, there's laws that are designed to keep women from being in a situation where they sell their babies. Like it's so lucrative to sell my baby at 9 months, that I'm going to do it, even though I really want to keep my baby. Does that make sense? So we tried to find a way to because she waited so long. If you're paired with a birth mother when they're just first pregnant, you pay for their doctor's appointments, you pay for their phone bills, you pay for food for them, you pay for transportation, you can pay them monthly money, like you pay whatever you want. But when, she only had 3 weeks left in her pregnancy, so it was very little money that we could give her. So we tried to work with the lawyer to maximize that amount of money because it was so little money. Mm-hmm. So we tried, we tried to help her because she was alone, like literally alone. And but we also, we didn't want to overstep. We didn't want to be like, we're your saviors. We're going to come in and, help you. We tried not to be like that either, but it's really tricky. It was so emotionally exhausting to be at the hospital while she was giving birth because I was the only one who spoke Spanish. So I was really the only one who could communicate with her. Luckily, there were 1 or 2 nurses in the delivery that were speaking Spanish to her, which was really helpful. But I was so exhausted from that whole experience that when we came home with my daughter, Alia, from the hospital, I slept for 2 days.
Oh my goodness.
My mom came and was with my husband and they took care of Alia and I literally slept for 2 days.
Oh. I've got so many follow-up questions and I'm just here listening to this story because there's so many emotional complexities, right? The experience of sitting with somebody while they give birth to a child that they're going to place in your arms and say, you're going to be the mama. You've got to have all of the human range of emotions in that moment.
It was one of the most intense things I've been through. Yeah. I tried to just treat her as an individual going through something. Like I tried to think like, if this was my girlfriend, how would I treat her? I would bring her food. I would bring her a sweater. What do you need? Do you want magazines? The doctor's giving you everything you need. Like, what do they want you to take medicine wise? Let me get your prescription. You know what I mean? I tried to just be a friend because she didn't have anybody with her.
That's so hard.
Oh God. It was devastating.
And you're being very open about her, a little bit of their story. And I know you've mentioned that there's an open adoption, there's a continued relationship. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I do want to get back to some of the early stuff, but let's talk about the relationship you have with Alba now.
Sure. We keep in touch. So when you're making an adoption agreement, you sit with a lawyer and the adopted mom and the adoptive mom are there and you decide, okay, how many pictures a year do you want? How many phone calls? And I agreed to whatever. And I just said, I'll agree to whatever you want. I'll agree to whatever you want, pictures on weekly, whatever. But it ended up turning out that Alba, it was too painful for Alba to see photos. And so what we agreed upon was that she would call me when she was feeling emotionally okay and ask for pictures at that time. So I just created like a drive file and I would upload pictures to it. And then I would just send her the link so she could see pictures because, her cell phone would change periodically. And who knows that they're being compressed so she can't really see good images. She doesn't have a smartphone. Well, she didn't at the time. So we keep in touch and she found a partner. She has 2 more children. And then she was able to bring her son back over from Guatemala because he was born in the US. So he's an American citizen. That's really great. She's had siblings come over and live with her. And basically the agreement we have or the arrangement we have is that like, I'm her like emergency backup for everything, like, cause she's undocumented. So I'm like, if you get arrested, if you get a ticket, if you don't understand what's going on, if you need help with the school registration, if you're in a bad situation, you just call me,
And has she pulled that trigger? Has she needed your support?
Yeah, she has occasionally needed my support, but nothing. She's very respectful of she's not the kind of person to take advantage. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we were able to have such a great relationship and I'm able to offer her so much,
Yeah.
support. There have been some situations she's gone through that have been really difficult for me to observe,
Mm.
like I just want to help her, and there's things I cannot do to help her. And it would have been a lot easier for me to just live my life and never know that she's going through all this stuff. But I just can't be like that.
Yeah. And how does your daughter feel about the relationship she has with Alba?
So she's only met Alba once. They were supposed to meet again. She was going to meet her siblings and Alba again, but Alba canceled at the last minute. I learned a lot from that. Don't tell Alia she's going to meet her birth mother until like we're literally on the way, because it might cancel. And that was just, Alia was like, well, doesn't she want to see me? And doesn't she care? And it was awful. But, Alba was just like probably having a panic attack about it. You know what I mean? She cries every time I talk to her about it. But Alia is, she asks about her birth mother, and I always tell her, oh, your birth mother loved you so much. She just loved you so, so much. And she couldn't take care of you. So she did what was hard for her and good for you, you know? And yeah, Alia just she doesn't really ask much about it. And I think probably because we're so open about it.
I was going to ask how she receives that information, how she processes it.
Yeah. I definitely, when she's mad at me, I definitely get I'm running away and I'm going to go to my real mom.
Mm-hmm.
She tells some people that she has siblings, and they assume that they're like, not her half siblings and that they live with her. I think wishes that she had siblings, but she's a kid. If she had siblings, she'd wish them away. So
100%.
Yeah.
That's always the case. Yeah.
There are emotional complications, like for sure. And I have girlfriends. I really can only express it to friends who have experienced adoption, because when I tell my girlfriends to just have their own biological children, that my daughter says things like, I hate you, I'm going to run away and go be with my birth mother. She started doing this when she was young, because she's also very spicy. And I just am taking it like, well, I mean, of course she's going to say that. Like, that's just a norm. Like, I would have said that, to my adopted mom too. Just when I was angry, you won't let me have pudding. Well, wait till I just like burn you with this one. But like my friends are like, oh, can you deal with that? And I'm just like, oh girl, you don't even know the stuff we deal with, the adoption process is just like the layers and layers and layers of emotion.
It's so many. I mean, you're dealing with 3 people or 4 people's emotions. Your husband, your daughter, and her birth mom. And
Mhm.
I've heard it described as this triad with the adoptive parents, the adopted child, and some people call it original, some people call it the birth mom. And each one has a very complicated relationship and with the outcome. How do you navigate all of those complications? How do you navigate holding space for your daughter's big emotions while loving her, or Alba's big emotions while also appreciating the fact that her pain is in some way your joy? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. It's an interesting situation to be in, to comfort her, to like help soothe her pain that is directly a result of my greatest joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boundaries, really firm boundaries. I have really firm boundaries. I would say boundaries. And with my daughter, she is a highly sensitive person. She is very empathic. Has huge emotions. And I want her to always come to me with her emotions. So I try to just be a safe place for her. And I just don't take it personally. I just don't take it. I learned that from my mother. My mother had to deal with me. So she would just be like, okay, honey. All right. Yeah, I know. So yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah, that's great. Boundaries and just being that safe place for your daughter's emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah. When your daughter's all grown up, when she's in her 20s and looks back on this experience, do you have like, in the same way that you had a vision of holding her hand and having this mom-daughter relationship, do you have a sense for what you want her to feel or think or know about her adoption?
I haven't actually. I mean, I hope that it's how she sees it now, which is that, she's grateful. She says a lot that she's grateful to have a family, that
Mm.
she's really grateful to have a family and she loves her family. I hope that she just is grateful for what she does have and that she takes what she doesn't have with a grain of salt, just like I would if she were my biological child. It's like life is never perfect. It's always going to be something that you wish was different. And there's always going to be something that gives you trauma, and it's like just to try to be appreciative of what you have. So I hope that when she's a teenager, or when she's a young adult, that she's able to say, I'm really lucky that I have this life, whatever it could have been or not. I'm lucky to have this life.
Gratitude is one of those things that is complicated because we all want to practice gratitude in our lives. And we know, there's a lot of scientific studies that when you practice gratitude, your brain chemistry changes.
It's true.
So wanting to feel joy in the life that we do have, whatever that looks like, is a beautiful hope for anyone we love. And in the adoption community, it can be triggering because so many people see themselves as adoptive parents who are rescuing a child and they should just be so thankful that they were rescued. Don't think that's the way I'm hearing gratitude from you.
No.
But I want to clarify. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, just gratitude that that she's healthy and she has opportunity and she's loved by her family and she had grandmas growing up and, aunts and uncles and she loves her cousins and, just gratitude for what she does have because she really, we tell her all the time, we are the luckiest parents in the world to have her. We're so lucky to have her. That she's the best thing that we could ever have. That we don't know what we did to be so lucky to get to be her mom and dad. We tell her like every day. So what we hope is that when I think about it, I literally just think about how I practice gratitude, which is just like, I'm in my beautiful studio. The sun is shining. I'm not sick. My family's okay. You know what I mean? Like I just go through all the list of things that really just are wonderful. And I just want her to be like that. I want her to be like, my parents loved me. They weren't perfect. It wasn't a perfect situation, but they loved me, and they,
It's almost like sharing a mindset more than gratitude around a specific adoption experience is what I'm hearing.
For sure. Yeah.
I did want to clarify that.
No. I just meant like gratitude. I want her to feel gratitude for what she does have in her life and not be fixated on what could have been or what, what could have been different because there's just no way of knowing what her life would have been like.
And by the way, I say the same thing to my son. He is a biological child and there's a lot of things that had to come together for him to enter my life, right? I had to find the perfect sperm donor. I had to be lucky enough that fertility treatments worked. I had to be lucky enough to have the financial resources to do this. And so the biology doesn't necessarily come into play when it's like, I can't believe I get to be your mom. Like that's the best joy that could ever have happened to me because it's circumstantial. The stars had to align perfectly for this incredible being to be in my life. And the same way that the stars aligned perfectly for Alia to be in your life. And so sometimes it's not even around the adoption experience,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just like any parent, I just want my child to be happy.
I want to go back for a second to that vision that you're seeing yourself from behind holding this daughter who had dark hair. And you had also said that you didn't necessarily see yourself with a baby. So can you talk a little bit about how the shape of your vision around what an adoption could look like has changed over time?
So I wanted to adopt ever since I was really young. So I used to read Self magazine. Do you remember that magazine?
I do remember that magazine.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah. I used to read it when I was a teenager and they always had like health articles in there. And I read every article that was about infertility, miscarriage, and adoption. I don't know why, but I just was like, I would see an article and it would be like, this woman had 7 miscarriages. And I'd be like, I need to know. I have to read this. I need to know what this is like. And this was when I was like 13 or 14. So I don't really know what that was about. But I read this article about this single mom who wanted to adopt, and she went to Russia and she was going to adopt from an orphanage and she wanted a baby. But there was a 7-year-old girl there. And she was Romani and she had been like locked out of her home in the cold in Russia. And so she had gotten frostbite and lost fingers. And for whatever reason, Romani beliefs, according to this article, meant that she wouldn't be adopted because she was missing fingers or whatever. And so that basically she was going to stay at the orphanage until she was 18 and then most likely become a prostitute. Like this is what the article said, right? So she just couldn't stop thinking about this little 7-year-old girl. And she ended up bringing home the 7-year-old instead of the baby. And the whole article was about like what it was like to bring a non-English speaking, Russian speaking 7-year-old home. And I just never, ever in my life forgot about that woman. And I was just like, that woman is so brave.
Yeah.
That was just like so incredible. And so I always just thought, if I want to be open like that, I want to have that kind of a mindset. But then we just ended up getting in. I mean, like I watched Alia be born. I watched her be born. I cut her umbilical cord and, so
That's
I wasn't
amazing.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but I was really grateful. But yeah, I just wanted a kid and I didn't care the race or the sex of the kid. I think that really helped us in the with our adoption agency, because they were so amazed. They're like about 1% of people who adopt say they're open to any race. She's like, we're going to put you at the front of the list so we can meet with you first. And so we got to have one of our informational meetings quicker because we were just really like, whatever baby needs a home. And I asked all my friends, who were familiar with adoption, or, I thought we might get a Black child. So I asked all my Black friends, hey, do you know anyone who's interracial adoption? How did it affect them? What do you think? What's your perspective? And I heard all kinds of different perspectives. I read every article, like I was fully ready. And then I never told them about my vision. I never told them that I wanted a little Latin American girl. Never told them that. And then that's what we ended up having. It just felt like, I don't know, like it was meant to be. Even though it's really hard for me to say that because it was meant to be, worked out so great for me, but not for her birth mom. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
everything has that little twinge of pain.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's hard to hold the both and the extreme joy and the extreme pain in the same place. And that's why adoption is so hard to talk about, because you can lean to the toxic positivity. It's all wonderful and it worked out for me, or I'm the savior. Or you can lean into the darkness and just sit in the pain. I mean, I haven't adopted and I'm not personally adopted, so I can't speak to that, but if that feels right, that feels right. But to sit in the both seems like it must be very hard.
It's really hard. I think it's also kind of just a metaphor for everything in life. Everything is like that. You look at your child and you just think, she's so beautiful. I love her so much, but she's growing so fast and it's so inconvenient. What I mean? It's like, it's all of that at the same time. All the time.
Yeah, that is totally true. I mean, I think I had like an absolute meltdown when my son turned 6 weeks because it meant he was no longer a newborn and the hormones or whatever, but I lost it. And my mom's like, what is wrong with you? You have a happy, healthy baby. Why are you crying over this? And it was because it was the first time I had to hold the bitter and the sweet at the same time. That I had to hold this, like, cherish the babyhood, the newbornness, and also cherish the new stuff and mourning the transition. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's silly, but
it's not silly. It's not silly at all.
One of the things that's changed a lot from an outside perspective is your art. How much of that has been informed by your medical journey, which we haven't talked about much, your infertility journey, your adoption experiences, or is it informed by something totally different, a religious awakening or spiritual awakening or something like that?
I have never been one of those artists that paints or uses their pain to feel their art. I have some friends like that. I've never been like that. I am one of those people who is compulsively creative. I cannot stop it. If I can't paint, draw, cook, decorate, arrange flowers, whatever, if I cannot do that, I start to lose my mental health. Like, I must create all the time. I must. If I have an idea for a kind of a painting, I literally, everything stops and I have to go do it right then and there. That's just how I am. So my work will never stop evolving. My hope for myself is I'm 85 and still like, this is a new kind of work for me, Michelle. I've never seen this before. I'm like, yeah, well,
just here it is.
Doing. I got to do it. There's so much work in my studio that looks so different. I mean, I paint portraits, I paint intricate things. I just wood panel, like all kind of paintings you would never know I made because I just had an idea and had to had to do it. And those ideas will eventually become the seed for something else. And like, just like I think that when I first started painting, what I really wanted to paint was the style I'm painting now. I just didn't understand that that's where I was headed.
Can you describe the style you're painting in now?
Yeah, I paint with concentrated watercolors and inks and dyes on raw canvas. So it's not a white background. It has more texture and depth, and it's kind of like a creamy color. And my paintings are meant to be sort of like, I think of them as like the chemistry of love, and like that, that feeling in your chest when you feel love, and like your heart, it feels like radiated, or like when you hug someone and it feels really good. We know that your electromagnetic field is now different because it's been impacted by another person's electromagnetic field. And I just think that's so beautiful. And I paint that, I capture that feeling with paint.
I love it. Okay. So we started the conversation by saying that your husband has this really expansive worldview that we just have to share as much love as possible, and that we should, as a human race, be loving as much as possible. And then we're now here at your art, which is the visual representation of love. That's really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like I'm a nerd, so I really love like, water tension. And then if I add this substance has a higher viscosity, and how does it travel through the water, and the rate at which the pigment drops through the water and settles onto the canvas. I mean, like that stuff is just really exciting. But to me, the two disparate elements coming together, it's like two people coming together, two cultures coming together, two families coming together. It's just like my practice and meditation and presence always comes down and back to love. It's just always comes back to love, loving yourself, loving where you are, and just unconditionally accepting, and just really crave that represented physically,
Yeah, it's like I'm almost recalling like the Italian grandmas who make the sauce on Sunday nights and it tastes so delicious. And you say, what did you do differently? And they say, it's the love, obviously. It's like that extra factor. And I'm actually going to go backwards with one thing, because I think we started this question at the beginning, but I just want to make sure I fully understand. When you talk about family and the word family, what does it mean to you?
Oh, that like, it's a feeling. It feels like cozy Sunday morning in your pajamas, and you're just happy to be together, and that's what a family feels like to me. It's like I'm immediately transported to my childhood, and my dad's name is Miguel, and his name's Mike. And he used to make egg Mike muffins. So cute. And he would be like, who wants egg Mike muffins? And we would have that for breakfast, and we would be in our pajamas that my mom sewed, and they were all matching, and it was just ridiculously adorable. And it just felt like cozy, like to be together in a cozy house.
Yeah.
And so we do that with our daughter now. We say all the time, we're like, aren't we lucky? We're so cozy. We have a cozy house to be together in. And that's family, is just being cozy together.
That's amazing.
I feel so much for people who are searching for that base, that foundation. I think it's just like, it's really important to have, whether you build it, whether you're born into it, or you have to build it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Like it's very important for humans. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do well in isolation. And so however we define community or family is really critical for our emotional well-being and our social well-being, our society's well-being.
Exactly. And it also feels like a rebellious act. It really does feel like, growing up in the South, it really feels like creating your own family that doesn't look like the traditional patriarchal picture of a family is a rebellious act, and that you need to engage in some pretty radical self-love to believe that you deserve that to be your family, because we are just inundated with these messages that family can only be one thing. And, that's just not true. But it's very, very difficult depending on how you grew up, it's difficult to reach that conclusion and to really believe that family, it doesn't have to be that. My heart goes out to those people.
That's exactly why I started this podcast, is because there's so many people who want to have family lives and families that look a little non-traditional, and they feel like they can't have that. They don't get to access that, either because they buy into whatever society tells them is acceptable and normal, or because, I don't know, there's something in their heart that's saying they don't deserve it, exactly as you just said. Thank you for identifying that. I want to switch directions just for a second and go back to your daughter. Does Alia paint? Is she into art? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she is. She sort of started rebelling against coming into my studio. I think it's also pretty smelly in here. I'll say it smells like paint. She stopped wanting to come in here quite as much, but yeah, we draw together and paint together. Her personality is such that it started to get tricky because she wants everything to be perfect. So she gets upset if we're drawing trees and she thinks my tree looks better than her tree. She gets really upset.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did not know how to deal with that. I was like, I don't understand. Because I try to be a good leader. So I'm like, oh, look, I messed up. Oh, well, I messed up. No big deal. Or, oh, this bird didn't really turn out how I wanted it to. But also, like, I also can't help it when I'm drawing. I just draw.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I'm going to draw a much nicer tree and a much more birdie looking bird. And, like, I can't help it. That's just, I draw. That's just what I do. Ever since I was a kid. So it got a little tricky, but I think she's passed a little bit now. So we do much more abstract-y kind of things.
If she were ever to draw with me, she would feel really good about herself. Because yeah, it's a talent that some people possess.
You can hone it with practice.
And that's actually one of the things that you're doing. We started the conversation offline about the work you're doing to teach creativity to a new audience. Do you talk about love in that context when you're doing a lesson for beginners? Do you say, paint love?
I actually haven't started. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to teach these things. But yes, one thing I do definitely talk about in my in-person classes where I'm teaching, I'm teaching technically how to create these particular paintings I make. I definitely talk about accepting things how they are. Like the medium that I paint in, you can't change it. You can't fix it. After you've made a decision and you make your mark, you have to accept. I didn't think that the ink was going to spread that far, but you have to just watch it spread and accept that it is going to do what it's going to do. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I didn't realize that would be probably the most difficult concept for my students to accept.
I'm getting extremely stressed hearing you say that. My whole body is getting tense thinking about accepting things that we can't change, which is such an important life lesson, and particularly making decisions and just allowing the decision to play out. I do not like that.
Yeah. And then the next decision you make is a reaction to how the first decision turned out. And then you just that's how you build a composition. And, oh yeah, there are people who have very physical reactions to that. I can't. And I just think, like, what a great opportunity to teach this, because I learned this just because I have to. There's no other option. That's just how art is. It turns out the way you want it or it doesn't. And there's a lot of just like, well, that didn't work. Well, that didn't work. It's just like something that I'm very comfortable with just from the decades of being a painter. But and
how apropos, I mean, it may seem like I'm going to make a big stretch here, but I don't think I am. To the extent that art and love is life, and failure or accepting things the way they are is life, it's so related or interrelated to family building. Mm-hmm. For instance, in my life, you could say that about my dating. Like, every step I made, I just had to accept whether it was the right choice or not. And it led me to a point where now I'm a solo mom. Yeah. That's fine, right? Or many people make choices to invest in their career and then they ultimately choose not to have kids. Mm-hmm. Or you are given something that you can't control, like endometriosis. Mm-hmm. And that ends up with the family that you had always held in your head as a vision. So, it's your art in some ways, I hope I'm not making too much of a stretch, is very related to family building.
It totally is. In fact, one of my favorite commissions to do is I have people who contact me and ask me to paint the essence of their family.
Oh my God, wait, you do that?
Yes, it's so cool. I've had a couple people and they say like, it's me and my husband, here's my 3 kids. I want you to do a painting with 5 stacks of totems. And I call them totems because the word, the whole thing. And these are the 5 people in my family. This one's quirky, this one's studious, this one's and then I just kind of hold all that in my mind and I paint. It's like a family portrait, but it's their energies I'm painting. And then or like moms will send me videos of their kids and they're like, here's my daughter, paint her energy.
I'm 100% going to do that. Touch base with you offline. And Stork listeners, you should too. That is an incredible gift that you can get to capture that essence in a moment in time. Mm-hmm. How lovely.
I love it. I really love it. That's really a lot of what you're doing when you're being asked, when someone's commissioning a painting from you. Yeah. They're giving you all of this input and then it just gets sort of swirled around in your mind and then you just create. I love it so much. Actually, probably commissions is one of my favorite parts of my job.
Oh my goodness. So if somebody listening to this wanted to do a commission or wants to learn about how to take a beginner art class in Atlanta with you, or just wants to see your work as you just described it, this electromagnetic field or this essence of love, where do we find you?
Just my name, michellearmas.com.
Wonderful.
And you can have everything there. It's really easy.
It is really easy. And you've got great social media and there's so much to follow.
Yeah. My social media, I have a contact me button right on there. That is like my actual real phone number. It really comes right to me. I really get texts from people like, is this real? I don't know if this is real, but I just wanted to talk to you. Like, hey, of course. Yeah. It hasn't gotten crazy to the point where I have to take my number off there yet. So I'm just going to keep it up until I can't take it anymore.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to Stork'd with your host, Julia Carroll. This podcast is changing the conversation around the ways people define and create family. If you like what you hear, please support us by sharing with friends and following on Instagram at Stork'd_podcast. We also always appreciate it when you rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information, visit storkedpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter. That's STORKD podcast.com.